When you finally let go, everything falls into place. Lao Tzu once said, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." Letting go is not about losing. It is about clearing space for what is true, natural, and meant for you. So many of us cling to expectations, fears, or old identities, believing they protect us, when in reality, they are the very chains that keep us from peace. Buddhism teaches that the tighter you hold, the more you suffer. But the moment you release, life begins to flow in harmony. As you listen today, ask yourself, what are you still holding on to that is preventing your happiness? Share your thoughts in the comments, because here on Dharma Pulse, every story is a mirror, and together, we learn that freedom begins the moment we let go. 1. The illusion of control. Most suffering is not born from the storms of life themselves, but from the iron grip with which we try to command them. We cling to control as if it were a shield, yet the tighter we hold, the more existence slips through our fingers like water resisting capture. Buddhism reminds us that the root of pain lies not in what is happening, but in the way we demand it unfold according to our will. Control is a mirage, a projection of the ego that promises safety while quietly eroding our peace. When we live enslaved to this illusion, we exhaust ourselves, attempting to choreograph every outcome, defend every identity, protect every fragile structure we have mistaken for permanence. And yet, the harder we resist impermanence, the more restless our spirit becomes. For resistance is the language of fear, not of freedom. To live in mindfulness is to awaken to this truth, to witness how the mind contracts in its hunger for certainty, and to soften that grasp with presence. The Buddha's wisdom is sharp and uncompromising. You only lose what you cling to. When you attach your survival to possessions, roles, or relationships, fear becomes your constant companion, because deep within you already know their temporary nature. Letting go, then, is not a collapse into weakness, but an ascension into strength. It is the courage to trust that life itself carries an intelligence far greater than the ego's calculations. Psychology affirms what Buddhism has taught for centuries. The ego's compulsion to control is the true architect of anxiety. When we attempt to script every chapter of our existence, we shrink our consciousness to the narrow confines of fear and scarcity. Yet when we release this compulsion, our vibration rises, and we begin to harmonize with the unseen order of life. This shift is not theoretical, it is experiential. Mindfulness trains us to breathe into tension, to notice the moment the hand of the mind closes too tightly, and to open it again with awareness. In that release, we rediscover a freedom that was never lost, only concealed beneath layers of grasping. Energy follows the same law. Systems that are rigid collapse under pressure. Systems that are fluid endure and transform. Your own consciousness mirrors this truth. The more rigidly you cling, the heavier your energy becomes, vibrating at the frequency of fear. But when you surrender, when you step into the current instead of fighting against it, your energy expands, aligning with the natural rhythm of existence. Paradoxically, it is only then, when you finally let go, that everything falls into place. The chaos that once terrified you begins to reveal its hidden symmetry, and the uncertainty you feared becomes the very ground of liberation. This is not passivity, nor an invitation to abandon responsibility. To trust the flow is the highest act of courage, for it demands that you abandon the illusion that you are the master of life and instead become its student. In this surrender, the mind grows quiet, the heart softens, and the soul returns to its original clarity. Pain dissolves not because the external world has shifted, but because your relationship with it has been transformed. The illusion of control fades like a shadow at sunrise, and in its absence, a vast freedom emerges, spacious, luminous, and unshakable. This is the wisdom of letting go, the path of mindfulness, and the essence of Buddhist teaching. Suffering ends not when the world bends to your will, but when you release the will to control it. Comment below, I release the illusion of control, if you're ready to let go and allow life to fall beautifully into place. 2. The paradox of detachment. Detachment is often mistaken for indifference, yet in truth, it is a profound form of freedom woven into Buddhist wisdom. It does not mean withdrawing from life or refusing to care. It means showing up with your whole being, but no longer being a prisoner of outcomes. The chains that hold you are not the events themselves, but your desperate attempt to control them, to force life into a shape that fits your fragile sense of self. Think of how tightly you cling to relationships, careers, or identities, and ask yourself whether that grip has ever brought you peace, or whether it has only amplified fear and exhaustion. The paradox is clear. The more you try to bend life to your will, the more it resists. But the moment you release your grip, things begin to align in ways you could never orchestrate. Detachment is not the death of passion, but the rebirth of clarity. When you release the need for control, you make space for authentic power to emerge, a power that does not come from dominance over circumstances, but from mastery of your own mind. This principle is practiced every time you engage in meditation. You sit, the mind races, thoughts crash against each other, emotions rise like waves, yet you do not cling to them, and you do not push them away. You simply witness. And in that witnessing, you begin to understand that peace does not come from silencing the storm, but from no longer being tossed by it. Buddhist wisdom points again and again to this truth. Attachment is suffering. Detachment is liberation. Thich Nhat Hanh taught that letting go gives us freedom, and freedom is the only condition for happiness, reminding us that happiness is not found in clinging, but in the courage to release. But here's the shock. Letting go feels like death to the ego, which is why so many resist it. The ego whispers that if you loosen your grip, you will lose everything. Yet in reality, what you lose are only illusions, the false stories that keep you chained. What remains when the illusions dissolve is not emptiness, but fullness, not loss, but life itself in its raw, untamed beauty. So the question becomes, how much of your suffering is born not from reality, but from the stories you have created about how things should be? How many sleepless nights are spent fighting shadows that vanish at dawn? What if the very battles you wage are illusions sustained only by your unwillingness to release them? The lesson is startling, but simple. Surrender is not weakness, but wisdom. It does not strip you of power. It hands you back the power you unknowingly gave away to fear, to control, to expectation. When you stop trying to own the river and instead learn to flow with it, you discover an ease that was always waiting beneath the turbulence. Life begins to self-correct. Endings make way for beginnings. Losses create space for deeper gains. And what once seemed like chaos reveals itself as hidden order. The paradox of detachment is that in letting go of everything, you finally see clearly what was meant to stay. To live with this awareness is to live freely, to embody the core of Buddhist wisdom, and to step into a state where meditation is no longer just something you practice on a cushion, but a way of moving through every moment of life with openness, courage, and peace. 3. Overthinking creates chaos. Overthinking is not wisdom. It is a clever disguise of chaos, a voice that convinces you that if you turn a problem over enough times, you will finally reach an answer, when in truth, you are only digging deeper into confusion. It is like standing before a hall of mirrors, where every reflection multiplies until you cannot tell which one is real. And the more you search, the more you lose yourself. The Buddha reminded us that peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. And this truth reveals that peace is not found in endless analysis, but in the stillness of awareness. The restless mind is like muddy water, stirred until it is opaque and heavy. But the moment you stop agitating it, the mud begins to sink, and clarity rises effortlessly. Stillness is not laziness. It is the highest form of intelligence, because it restores your energy instead of wasting it on thoughts that never end. Overthinking is a thief. It steals silently, not from your possessions, but from your joy, your rest, your ability to be present with those you love. You wake weary, not because of life's burdens, but because of the invisible wars fought inside your head. Battles against imagined futures, against fears that may never arrive. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. And modern science confirms what the sages always knew. The brain cannot always tell the difference between what is vividly feared and what is truly lived. Every anxious loop drains your spirit, leaving you spiritually starved and energetically weak. But the mind is not your enemy. It is a sky filled with clouds, and each thought is only a passing shape. Overthinking is the futile attempt to rearrange those clouds into perfection, exhausting yourself in the process. Awareness is the act of standing still and letting the sky be the sky, watching the clouds drift by without needing to control them. This is the shift where spirituality becomes alive, because in that moment, you are no longer a prisoner of your mind, but the silent witness of its play. Your energy changes. Your presence becomes calm instead of chaotic. Your very being radiates peace instead of panic. Healing begins not when you think harder, but when you trust more deeply. When you allow silence to reclaim its throne and let thoughts serve you instead of ruling you. And so, the next time your mind races, remember the muddy water and let your hands rest. Stop grasping at clouds and trust the flow of the sky. The paradox is simple, yet profound. The more you release your grip, the more life falls into place. In letting go, you do not lose control. You find a deeper kind of control, one rooted not in force, but in harmony. This is how you reclaim your energy, how you rediscover healing, and how spirituality ceases to be an abstract idea and becomes the lived experience of freedom, serenity, and wholeness. Are you ready to break free from the endless cycle of overthinking and find true peace? If so, comment below. I will meditate to show your commitment to letting go of chaos and embracing clarity. 4. Why caring too much backfires? When you begin to care too much, what feels at first like compassion soon hardens into chains that bind both you and the very people you wish to help. The more you try to manage, control, and carry the burdens of others, the more your own spirit collapses under the weight. Buddhism reminds us that real compassion is not control, but mindfulness, being fully present, steady like a mountain, allowing life to unfold without interference. When you confuse responsibility with love, you drain your own energy and deny others the chance to walk their own path. Over-responsibility becomes a silent thief, robbing you of peace and leaving you with burnout masked as devotion. Energy, like water, must flow freely to remain alive. When you dam it up by holding on too tightly, it stagnates, grows heavy, and loses its purity. The same is true of your inner being. When you carry every problem as if it were yours to solve, your frequency lowers, your vitality fades, and your heart beats with exhaustion instead of freedom. The Buddha's words echo here. You only lose what you cling to. By clinging, you do not save anyone. You only lose yourself. By letting go, you do not abandon anyone. You simply trust the natural rhythm of life to teach what must be learned. True compassion is not rushing to put out every fire, but standing calmly beside the one who must learn from the flames. It is not suffocating growth with constant interference, but trusting that struggle contains hidden seeds of transformation. Your task is not to sculpt another's destiny, but to embody presence so deeply that your energy becomes a silent invitation for awakening. In this way, mindfulness is not passive. It is the highest form of strength. It says, I honor your journey, and I trust life enough to step back. Look at the tree. It does not twist its branches into place. It roots itself deeply and allows the sun, wind, and rain to do their work. If you can learn this same art of trust, your relationships will no longer be prisons of overcare, but living spaces of freedom where each soul breathes and grows. As Lao Tzu taught, when I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. Letting go is not weakness, but wisdom, not distance, but love in its purest vibration. And when you release the illusion of control, you will see that everything quietly, almost magically, begins to fall into place. 5. Letting go of validation. Chasing validation is like drinking salt water the more you consume. The thirstier you become, and the more you lose yourself in the process. Every time you bend your words, silence your truth, or shape your choices to fit the applause of others, you abandon the essence of your being and step into the role of a performer on a stage you never agreed to stand on. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that one of the deepest roots of suffering is attachment, and the craving for approval is among the most deceptive of them all. When you allow your sense of worth to be dictated by others, you hand them the power to define you, and you live not from your own alignment, but from fear. Meditation reveals this truth with piercing clarity. When you sit in silence and watch the mind, you begin to see how thoughts of validation rise like smoke and vanish into emptiness, showing you that they only enslave you when you cling to them. As the Buddha taught, you only lose what you cling to. And when you cling to the shifting opinions of others, you lose your freedom, your peace, and your authentic self. Consider how fragile that identity is if it collapses the moment criticism replaces applause. What kind of strength is that? Real strength cannot be borrowed from the hands of others. It is forged in the fire of authenticity, in living from the quiet courage of alignment, even when no one is clapping. Ask yourself, Are you truly living, or merely performing for an audience that may never understand you? The moment you let go of this invisible prison, something remarkable happens. The silence of disapproval becomes less terrifying than the emptiness of self-betrayal, and the absence of applause becomes lighter than the constant burden of pretending. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to stop caring, but to stop depending. To recognize that your being is already whole without the stamp of approval from anyone else. Through meditation, you train the mind to witness the rising urge to seek validation without obeying it, until one day you notice the audience you feared was only a phantom in your own imagination. In that space of freedom, you no longer audition for acceptance. You embody your truth. You no longer search for approval. You radiate presence. And in that shift, you realize that everything you sought outside has always been within. The lesson is unshakable. Let go of the applause. Release the craving for validation, and you will uncover a foundation of authenticity so steady that no praise can inflate it and no criticism can shatter it. This is the power of living aligned with your own being. The power that makes fear dissolve and freedom flourish. When you step into this alignment, you do not lose yourself. You finally find yourself. And in that moment, everything begins to fall perfectly into place. Leave your likes and subscribe to our channel, and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any powerful wisdom like this. And if you're ready to release the need for outside approval and live true to yourself, type in the comments, "I let go of validation." 6. The whatever happens mindset. Adopting the whatever happens, I remain mindset is not about indifference, but about discovering a deeper form of spiritual confidence that anchors you in peace beyond outcomes. It is the choice to stand steady even as life shifts unpredictably, to remain rooted like a mountain while clouds and storms pass overhead. Most of the pain you carry does not come from events themselves, but from the way you cling to them, trying to force life into a shape that matches your fears. As the Buddha taught, you only lose what you cling to. When you hold too tightly to jobs, relationships, or identities, they begin to drain you, because survival becomes tangled with attachment. But the moment you loosen your grip, you realize life was never trying to crush you. It was trying to carry you forward, and the current you resisted is the very energy meant to guide you toward freedom. Society convinces us to grasp, to define ourselves by possessions, achievements, or outcomes. But this is an invisible prison made of expectations rather than iron bars. The key to escape lies in surrender, in the simple whisper of "whatever happens, I remain," which breaks chains and returns you to the strength of your true self. This surrender is not weakness, but awakening, not resignation, but empowerment. For when you stop demanding control over life, you awaken to the subtle flow of spirituality that was always around you, a river of healing energy waiting to hold you and lead you back to wholeness. Consider the lotus flower, rising pure and untouched above the mud in which it is rooted. It does not curse the water or struggle against the mud. It simply remains, and in that stillness, it radiates beauty. You too can embody this lotus when you let go of resistance, when you understand that peace does not come from external fortune, but from the inner soil of surrender. The Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength, that truth echoes here, because lasting peace can never be built on the shifting ground of outcomes. It can only be cultivated within. So when fear rises, when uncertainty clouds your path, remind yourself, whatever happens, I remain. Let these words sink into your breath and into your bones. The world can strip away roles, possessions, and appearances, but it cannot touch the essence of who you are. When you root yourself in that essence, you stop chasing life and instead allow life to unfold through you. Healing begins in this surrender, not by forcing, but by flowing, not by clinging, but by trusting, not by seeking certainty, but by discovering presence. True strength is the ability to stand in the fire without being burned, to walk through darkness without losing your inner light. And in this realization, everything you were grasping for begins to quietly fall into place. 7. You are not your thoughts. Thoughts rise and fall like drifting clouds, temporary shapes crossing the boundless sky. But you are not the cloud. You are the vast sky itself, the silent awareness that remains untouched no matter how dark or bright the passing form may be. The mistake of the human condition is that we cling to these clouds as if they were permanent, building our identity from fragments of memory, worry, and desire, until we forget the spacious freedom that has been with us all along. Buddhism teaches through mindfulness that liberation is found not in fighting against thoughts or forcing silence, but in seeing them clearly, in watching the restless mind without attachment, in realizing that the voice in your head is not your true self, but only a passing echo. The Buddha said, "We are shaped by our thoughts. We become what we think." Yet this truth is not a command to worship the mind. It is a reminder to remain awake, to remember that you are the witness who sees thought arise and sees it dissolve. When you stop clinging, when you let go of the belief that every thought must be true, the invisible cage of illusion begins to fall away. And what remains is the unshakable awareness that cannot be wounded, cannot be diminished, cannot be lost. To live in this awareness is to step into a higher vibration, to rise beyond the dense weight of fear and control into a natural rhythm where life flows without resistance. Psychology tells us that the mind is a storyteller, weaving endless narratives about what you should do or who you should be. But spirituality reveals that the self who listens without becoming entangled is already free. When the thought says, "I am not enough," and you believe it, your body contracts, your energy shrinks, and your choices narrow. But when you see it as nothing more than a cloud dissolving in sunlight, you discover that the witness of the thought has never been touched by it. Energy science reminds us that resistance lowers vibration, while surrender raises it. And so the more you release, the more you align with the hidden order of existence, like falling into step with a cosmic dance that was always there, waiting for you to hear its rhythm. Letting go is not a retreat from life, but a deeper participation in it. For once, you no longer cling to control. You begin to see how everything already falls into place, not by your force, but by the natural harmony of being. The storm of thought can rage, yet the sky remains unbroken. The stories of the mind can shout, yet the silence remains vast and unshaken. Mindfulness trains you to return again and again to this silence, until one day you realize that freedom was never something to be gained, but only something to be remembered. To let go is to awaken, to step beyond the illusion that you are the thought, and to stand instead in the eternal presence that has been with you all along. To affirm your freedom from the mind's illusions, declare it boldly. Comment below, "I am not my thoughts," and let this reminder guide both you and others toward true inner peace. 8. Surrender as superpower. Surrender is not the collapse of will, but the rise of true strength. Because when you let go, you stop wrestling with life and begin to move in rhythm with it. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that much of our suffering comes not from events themselves, but from the tightness with which we cling to them, grasping at relationships, identities, and possessions as if they could secure our worth. In that desperate grip, we create invisible chains that drain our energy and bind us to fear. To surrender is to loosen those chains, to allow life to flow without the constant need to force or control. And in that release, you find a clarity and peace that struggle never grants. Think of the breath you take in meditation. Each inhale is a gift. Each exhale lets go. And only by releasing do you make room for more. The Buddha's words, "You only lose what you cling to," reveal the paradox that clinging is the very act that ensures loss, while surrender opens the door to transformation. Holding on too tightly is like trying to trap sand in your fist. The harder you grip, the faster it escapes. Yet when you open your palm, it rests gently, without effort. Life is the same. Love, success, identity, even happiness itself cannot be forced into permanence. They expand only when you allow them to breathe. Ask yourself, is your anxiety born from what is happening, or from your demand that it happen differently? The walls you build in the name of safety often become the prison that keeps you from freedom. Surrender does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means letting go of the illusion that you can bend reality to your will. It is an act of trust, a willingness to let the river flow and discover that its current carries you exactly where you need to be. Like the tree that bends in a storm, survival and grace come not from resistance, but from yielding. In surrender, you become unshakable, not because nothing touches you, but because nothing can break you. Meditation trains the heart for this, teaching you to soften into impermanence, to watch thoughts and emotions rise and fall without grasping, to see that peace is found not in control, but in release. When you live this way, you discover that surrender is not a defeat, but a hidden strength, a superpower that dissolves fear and aligns you with life's natural order. The moment you stop gripping, space opens for wisdom to guide you instead of panic, for peace to steady you instead of fear, and for alignment to draw toward you the very things you were chasing. This is the quiet miracle. When you finally let go, everything begins to fall into place, not because you forced it, but because you trusted it. When we truly learn to let go, we discover that life does not fall apart. It falls into place. In this video, we've explored how releasing attachments, loosening the grip of control, and trusting the natural flow of life can bring clarity, peace, and unexpected harmony. The teachings of Buddhism remind us that freedom is not found in clinging, but in surrender. Now, I encourage you to reflect. What is one thing in your life you are ready to release today? Share it in the comments below, and let's grow together as a community of mindful seekers. If you found value in this message, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Dharma Pulse, and join us on the path of inner peace and wisdom.